Comic book collecting seems simple. You walk into a shop, you buy a book, you bag it, you board it, and you're done. But this hobby has layers of complexity that can make the difference between building a collection that you absolutely love and blowing thousands on worthless paper. Understanding formats, eras, grading, and market speculation, that's what separates smart collectors with expensive mistakes. And to help break it all down, I brought in my good friend Doc. He's been collecting for over 40 years, has a personal comic book collection of over 14,000 comics, and even paid the down payment on his house by selling his copy of Amazing Fantasy 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man, which he bought when he was 14 years old. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. So let's start out with the basics every collector runs into: formats and eras. Single issues, what most people call floppies, are still the backbone of the hobby when it comes to collecting. Then you've got your trades, your hardcovers, massive omnibuses that try to put everything into one comic book. On top of that, comics do get divided into ages: Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze, Modern, each with its own style and identity. The real question is how much formats and eras actually matter when you're just starting out, and which ones make the most sense to focus on first.
You kind of hit the big points. From 1938 to 1956, it's kind of considered the golden era. Showcase number 4, so the first appearance of the Modern Flash, it started as the Silver Era or the Silver Age. Then you have the Bronze Age. You know, some people consider it from 1970 to about 1981. Some others consider it from like 85 or 75 to about 84 with Secret Wars. Then you have what the comic book industry considers basically everything after 1981 to be the quote unquote modern age. And then you'll even have other comic collectors that'll refer to the 90s and early 2000s as like kind of like the dark age or the chromium age or other things. I personally consider it that. But if you figure out an early collecting focus that you really like, you can kind of save a lot of money instead of just experimenting with all the different formats and all the different ages. Older books are generally going to be a lot more expensive. The 80s, 90s, 2000s books, a lot of those outside of Keys, which we'll get to in a little bit, you can find in dollar bins, basically at every major comic store in the world. Figure out early on where you would like to focus in order to get the most bang for your buck.
And it's certainly very important to understand the eras because they're eras for a reason. That's when publishing standards were very similar. And once they change and they alter, you get into another era. Once you're starting with Golden Age, if you want to be a Golden Age collector, it's going to be very, very expensive because those comic books are so rare because no one thought they could be valuable. Also, we had some wars in the meantime. There were lots of recycling efforts. Parents threw them away. Kids read them to shreds. And those Golden Age books are just very, very rare to find in even decent condition. You get to the Silver Age, still pretty rare, but people are starting to collect their comic books a little bit better. The print runs are kind of getting bigger, but that's also going to figure out into the value of those type of comic books you want to collect them. But once you start getting, kind of into the modern age stuff and you get into the 80s, you got the direct market, you have different formats. The print runs are absolutely enormous. So it can be very cheap if you want to just be, that extreme era of the 90s because everything was overprinted so much.
You have a lot of things playing into scarcity. And in a lot of cases, just how well preserved these things are. They're time capsules. They are disposable entertainment. And a lot of it was disposed of.
Absolutely. And there are some things people need to watch out for. You might sit there and you're like, oh my goodness, I have the most pristine copy of Action Comics #1. And more than likely you have a facsimile edition.
Yeah.
It looks the same, but it's a reprint, with modern paper and stuff like that. And you have to be aware that these things, a lot of times, especially the really important stuff, has been reprinted over and over again through the eras. And you need to keep an eye on, because some of those things can be valuable, but a lot of them just aren't because they aren't the real deal.
Typically with the facsimiles, you'll be able to just tell by whatever the cover price is. The old books were 6 cents, 5 cents.
So we know about the eras and all that kind of stuff, but condition is where the whole game really changed when it comes to collecting. Two people can own the exact same issue, but if one's crisp and flat while the other has bent corners and color breaks, you're talking about a difference of potentially hundreds of dollars. Collectors throw around terms like near mint, fine, or good. While they sound vague, they're actually pretty specific and carry weight in the market itself. Then you got grading companies like CGC or CBCS that lock a book into a plastic slab with an official score. And if you're unaware of grading standards, you can get taken for hundreds or even thousands of dollars during a comic book transaction. So you definitely need to be aware of what the grading standards are in comic books. But in the beginning stages, you do need to be able to look out for some very common defects that you're going to find in comic books: spine ticks, blunting, foxing, tanning, color rub. Can you talk about some of the very basic stuff and what you're going to look for?
First of all, I always look at the spine. That's the first place I'm looking. You can see ticks. And what I mean by ticks is like little tiny imperfections. You can see like the page as you opened it up kind of creates like a little bend. Now, the question is, does it break color or not? If it doesn't break color, it could be in one category. If it breaks color, it's larger. And if the larger the size of the color break is going to make a big difference. A lot of books from Marvel from like the Silver Age had this thing called Marvel chipping. Foxing is kind of a almost bacterial stuff that could really infest the old newsprint paper. And it doesn't have to be much. It could just be a little bit.
And when we're talking about that, we're talking about raw comics. And raw comics are comic books that you can pick up with your hands. They're sold as a comic book is. But you can also get them slabbed, which means that they've been sent in to CGC or CBCS or even PGX and been graded by professionals. And then they're put in like a plastic slab that basically keeps your comic book in the exact same condition with that grading. So if you don't want to go through the rigors of looking at it and taking the risk of a raw comic book, slabbing isn't quite as popular as it used to be because there have been a few controversies, but that certainly is a way of maintaining the form that you bought it in and keeping it at that grade.
Yeah, it's both objectification and preservation.
And then there's a few other things people are going to need to be aware of. It's going to be very difficult as a new collector to spot restoration, but there are color touch-ups, glue changes, reglosses, and stuff like that people do to make the comic book look like it's in better condition than it actually is, which definitely affects the value.
Oh, 100%. Comic book collectors, we want our books in the condition that time has resulted in. And basically, restoration is anything that is either chemical or additive.
Now, every new comic book collector dreams about stumbling across that magic book, the one with the first appearance that turns out to be an absolute gold mine. The reality is most key issues are already well known throughout the industry, and they usually come with price tags that absolutely prove it. Still, the chase is part of the fun. First appearances, deaths, costume changes, or big turning points all get the big key labels slapped on them. If you want to be a big key collector, you better back up the Brinks truck, but there are always diamonds in the rough waiting to be discovered. So key first appearances and key comic books are something that are definitely very valued within the comic book collecting sphere.
We were talking about rarity earlier, but there's also desirability. The first appearance of Superman, absolutely, in Action Comics 1. Is that desirable? Yes. Everyone on the planet knows who Superman is.
An official first appearance doesn't actually mean it's the first appearance. There could be a cameo in a comic book earlier.
Yep, because Hulk 180, Wolverine actually appears on the last page. But since he's not on the cover and he doesn't even do anything, he just pops in and says, I'm the Wolverine, they don't consider that a first appearance. You could also have other weird things like where something's planned to be their first appearance and then like an annual comes out before that character's in the background of. The comic book reading and buying and collecting world kind of comes together and makes those decisions. Sometimes they don't necessarily make the greatest amount of sense.
But just because there's a first appearance doesn't mean it's a key first appearance.
Yeah, I mean, look, it has to matter. The book has to matter. It has to stand the test of time. Oftentimes, you're not going to know that answer on the question of whether it'll stand the test of time until that time has passed. So Marvel comic retailers, comic vendors, they're going to try to hit the hype. For the publishers, yes, it's 100% crass marketing in order to bump up the sales for a particular issue, and they will do it the exact same way for the next issue. You're going to have to make a decision, especially if it's a new character on a new book that's coming out. Do you think this character is going to have legs, or is the media and the marketing division of these publishers trying to tell you that they have legs? You're going to want to have self-control. And don't fall for the hype. Think about things and see whether or not you feel like it's going to hold up. So this is some of the things that might not be the most predictable things in the world, because you don't necessarily know what they're going to do with that thing in the future. You can just guess and see if you think it has a cool factor that somebody's going to be able to do something cool with and make people like it.
Now, I've heard many horror stories about fantastic comic book collections ruined because someone didn't know how to store their comics properly. A little sunlight, a humid room, stacking boxes the wrong way can turn a nice run into warped junk faster than anybody would ever expect. That's where bags, boards, boxes come in, the basics that keep your comics looking sharp for years. You don't have to end up spending a fortune, but you are going to have to invest a lot of time because it's about getting the fundamentals right so you don't trash your books in the long run.
It is a little bit of investment because, like, you got your standard poly bags. They're relatively cheap, maybe about 10 to 15 cents per bag and board. That's what it'll about work out to. But they need changed out about every 8 to 10 years because they're a plastic and they do generate some off-gassing. But like the Mylar bags, they're more expensive, but they definitely keep your books in better condition and they are closer to lifetime. You don't have to go back through and rebag and board every so often. Look, I mean, you don't want to handle them more than is absolutely necessary, but you do want to make sure that you're keeping them in good condition. I have slowly kind of gone to changing all my stuff over to the Mylar, but I got away from the short boxes versus the long boxes because, you know, short boxes, you can fit about 100 comics in. Long boxes about 225 to 250, but weight wise, ease of handling, the short boxes are better. There's less of a chance of them collapsing on themselves or just falling apart because you're putting 75 pounds of other paper inside of a cardboard box.
A lot of people, I don't got boxes or whatever. I'm just going to stack my books.
No,
do not stack your books. It will destroy them.
Yes.
They need to be up.
Yeah, they need to be standing upright, but you also don't want to lean them too far or else you have spine stress. But when you stack books on top of one another, that side with the staple actually is slightly thicker. So over time, it causes the book to wear and warp. And you can also break, like literally blow out the spine because of all the weight that's sitting on top of it.
So you need bags and boards. Doc suggests Mylar. They are more expensive, but it's better for the book, better for off-gassing, and it will preserve your comic book better, and you won't have to replace them all the time. You need to keep them in some type of vessel, probably a long box or a short box, that keeps them up and not on their side, and you need to get rid of the humidity. Silica packs are going to be your friend wherever you're storing your comic books.
Yeah, I mean, just every time you buy a pair of shoes, just take that bag, that little pack in it, and just toss it into your long box on the side.
You got your big collection. You're up to 14,000. I don't think most people are ever going to get there, but some people are. You need to be able to keep track of what books you have because you're going to forget what issue of that Green Lantern runs that you actually own, that you want your complete collection on. You're going to need some apps or some way of keeping order and maintaining what books that you have, what variant covers of the books that you have. You can have a spreadsheet on your computer, but there are a lot of apps out there, CLZ, Cover Price. You can do some spreadsheets that will actually, you can scan the barcode and keep a log of all the books that you actually own.
I think all of us probably just start with the notebook method. A lot of us also then switched over to just like the Excel spreadsheet. But over time, even that becomes unwieldy. So that's when you start looking at app solutions. I personally use the CLZ app. I know Cover Price is also really enjoyed. Most of these also have want lists. So hey, I bought Amazing Spider-Man 302, but I have the newsstand variant. I like the presentation a little bit more on that direct variant, so that goes into your want list. It helps reduce wastes of money by double buying things that you already own. Some of those facsimile books, you don't realize it's a facsimile. You scan the barcode, it will tell you that it's the facsimile.
So let's get to the brass tacks here, Doc, because even the most pure collector still wants to know what their comics are actually worth. It's a part of the fun and sometimes part of the heartbreak. Guides like Overstreet or apps like Key Collector give you the ballpark numbers, but the real market is set in comic shops or places like eBay, where supply and demand do all the talking. The danger is making bank on one comic and going full speculator mode and adding way too much risk to your collection. There's a fine line between being smart and finding value and letting the chase for prices suck the joy, out of the hobby that you're getting into.
Typically, the easiest way I always do it is just check eBay's sold listings. I'll search for the book that I want, and I don't care what it's currently selling for or what it's priced for and available for. I care about what it actually sold for, because that's telling me what people are actually willing to pay. I could throw a copy of Todd McFarlane's Spider-Man #1 up there with a $50,000 buy it now price. Does that make that book worth 50 grand? No, it's still like a $20 book. You can also go to the LCS, see what they're pricing things at.
I've heard from a lot of people that they'll go to their LCS, and as they're checking out, they'll check the prices on the books that you're about to buy with eBay.
Oh, yeah, that's stores that don't have their books priced. If you walk in and there's a book that says $8 and then they start trying to check the eBay price at the cash register, walk out the door. Don't even say goodbye.
It's your responsibility as a collector to understand what's driving the heat. Is it because the character is supposed to show up in a movie? Has he even been confirmed? Was there a trailer out there that are going to drive those prices up? You're probably not going to jump in once everything's gotten hot. You want to jump in before then. Because eventually a lot of this stuff will go down. What are the media cycles out there? What was the print run for the comic book that you're even looking into? Is it even rare? And you need to be aware of all of these things and what people are saying about the book so you can get your fair price.
It's your money. You have to be comfortable parting with it and not end up regretting it a week from now because you got FOMO. Don't buy things because they're hot, because eventually there's going to be a cycle. It's going to cool back off. Don't be the one caught holding the bag at buy high, sell low prices. You want to go the other direction. You want to have this book that you're going to want to keep in your collection, or that you're going to want to be able to, maybe you're not actually that interested in it and you recognize that it's going to be a valuable book and you want to use that as a stepping stone to get that expensive book that you want. So you want to just make some money off of it. This is, I think, the biggest mistake any reader makes, any new collector makes. They see there and go, oh, it's one of 50. Okay. Is there 50 people that fucking want it?
You can use places like Go Collect, which also is a repository of like auctions and eBay sales and stuff like that. But do not look at the asking price. No. Look at what people are actually selling them for, because that dictates what it's worth. It's worth what people are willing to give you.
Yeah, that was the one thing my dad taught me that when I was a kid. It's not worth what this guy says it's worth. It's not worth what this price guide says it's worth. It's worth what somebody's willing to pay.
But there are no shortages of ways to get your hands on comic books these days. You got shops, conventions, online auctions, even dollar bins if you're willing to go and dig for some diamonds. Each one comes with its own set of wins and pitfalls, obviously. You might score a key issue cheap at a flea market or pay through the nose at a con for something that you could have found online for half the price. The real trick is figuring out which hunting grounds work best for your budget and your collecting style. And just as important, building relationships with comic shop owners and fellow collectors, because those will open doors to deals and books you'd never even be able to find on your own.
There's a lot of vendors that I deal with. They know what my collecting focus is. They don't have to look for a buyer. I don't have to seek out a copy because there's good communication. You've built relationships. Sometimes they can facilitate. They know a guy that they sold a copy to, and they know that you're in the market. You have the money to pay. It's not really actually even on the market. You didn't even know that guy had it. He didn't know that you were interested in buying it. These kind of relationships are very useful. Even through Instagram buying is good. Whatnot buying is good. You can do these things and develop these relationships with folks, and they'll reach out to you when they have something that they think that you might be interested in. The more you know what you want out of it, the more focused you can be. And when you're focused, you could do the best work.
You know, you end up in the long game because you want to be an X-Men completionist and you have an eye on, I want everything from X-Men #1 up to this specific date. And you're able to get a lot of that stuff for pretty darn cheap. But there at the end, there's 3 or 4 issues out there that you need to get that are in the 1 to 10s or something like that are very, very rare and expensive. And you're always looking for that best value. So part of the hunt is also really fun. Finding that last comic book that completes the collection is one of the greatest joys at comic books. If people are going to go online and buy some of these key comic books or maybe something of value from an eBay seller, what do they need to make sure they know before they can hit the do it now button?
Okay, so first thing you want to see is good photographs. If they have stock photos of the book, don't buy it. You want photos that look like they are of the book you are buying. And then you have to look through the description, make sure it says this is the book you're buying. If you got questions, don't hesitate to ask for additional photos. If you think something might be damaged or they took a photo to hide a flaw, who cares? You're not insulting them. Who cares if you are insulting them? Ask for the photos. It is your money. You want to check their user feedback.
Yeah, nobody wants to get their very fine comic book that they bought on eBay in a manila envelope.
Exactly. Check their user history. Make sure that they appear to be a knowledgeable and regular comic seller, because if you get a novice, you could end up with a very damaged book. And now you got to go through the whole eBay refund process, and that's no fun. It's not fun for anybody.
These fundamentals will help you avoid the most expensive mistakes. But Doc shared a ton of stories that I actually had to cut out here for the YouTube video, like how to spot restoration scams and when's the best time to buy comics at a comic book convention. The full hour-long conversation is live right now on Thinking Critical Patreon, as well as channel memberships in the latest episode of Doc Unfiltered, including his complete guide to hunting key issues and the networking strategies that built his legendary collection. I appreciate the time, and remember to keep thinking critical.